Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Netwrk Chatter, the bi-weekly show dedicated to talking with folks who've contributed in some way to the Vast Grimm universe. If you're not familiar, Vast Grimm is the first RPG published by Infinite Black, a brutal sci-fi horror setting where each member of your legion is trying not only to survive, but to save what's left of humanity. It's compatible with Merkborg and uses their third-party license. You can find out more about it at vastgrimm.com. The Pledge Manager is still open for a little bit longer on GameFound, and you can get cool things like t-shirts and other stuff on the Infinite Black website. I'm Brian Colin, your host and the creative lead for Vast Grimm. On tonight's episode, we have Dead Aussie Gamer Michael joining us. He has probably played more Vast Grimm than I think anybody else I know, I believe, at this point. I mean,
Well,
at least you're pretty close.
I'm not gonna lie. Sci-fi horror has always been like so big for me. And so when Brian actually reached out to me about Vast Grimm and said, "Hey, I'm doing a thing," I was so excited. Because it had just so many elements of like that kind of sci-fi horror mixed in with that whole cyber dark kind of like really cool, like it came from the 80s vibe. I love everything
Yes.
about it, and so I've played it with kids, I've played it with adults, I've played it for Halloween. I've done just so many awesome games with it too, and of course not including, but obviously never forgetting the game that you run, which is
Yeah.
just so much fun as well.
Nice. And I mean, not only the weekly or the bi-weekly game that we play, but also played on the Plus One EXP show, and then also played on the Nerdarchy show as well. So like you've managed to be able to work into almost all the games that I've run, which has been awesome. Um,
Thank you. I
and
appreciate that.
it's yeah, it's you've added a lot to each of the characters that you've played, and really brought to life a lot of the stories that we've run through, which has been a lot of fun. So for folks that are watching that might not know about you, the reason you came into one of the games was just because we had met a couple of years ago at a Gen Con. But before we get into a whole lot of like about like what you're working on for your story for the Volatile Verse, the Vast Grimm anthology uh, zine, you have a rich history with RPGs, and not only in what you do for a living, but it seems like you live and breathe gaming. So can you, for the folks that might not know you, can you tell a little bit about your history with RPGs?
Yeah, of course. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael. I am the Dead Aussie Gamer. I'm a performer and entertainer from Perth, Western Australia, and I am one of the very rare and few people out there in the known universe who I am a full-time role player and GM. That's all I do. I don't have a side gig. I don't have anything else. It's literally, as you say, I live and breathe. The interesting thing there is that I have done and been in so many different things that I've kind of gotten to this point in my life where I'm reaching a lot of goals. Like, I set out goals to like play with some of the most amazing role players in the world, and I've done so. I've featured on the D&D official Twitch channel, having played
Awesome.
2 seasons of new books and contents that came out. And I'm continually growing as a performer, showing people like not just like how much fun role playing is, but also like helping people with mental health issues, helping people with social anxieties. My actual day job is I work out of the local government teaching role playing games to kids so that they can not only have a way to express their creativity, but also find some, like real true love and joy in creative writing and performance work. So
What
yeah,
sort of age range
uh,
are the kids that are in those programs?
our youngest kid's 10 years old. Our oldest kid is 21, but that's, he's a kid. We call them young adults. It's like, yeah, you're out of university. We know that. We get that. You're still a kid. So it's quite a broad range. And a lot of the older ones are actually, I'll share this story. So I've been running out of my local youth center for, I mean, 7 years now, and our program has been not only one of the most successful ones there, but there have been other government organizations that have emulated what I've been doing. Trying to set up a similar support network for people who really people didn't realize were in need, right? Because when people
Hmm.
think about kids in need, they think of, the youths in the streets, who have domestic issues and things like that, or are
Hmm.
prone to acts of violence or whatever. And those are true, of course, but getting to shine a light on a new type of need that comes from young people through the role playing game stuff has been not only very rewarding, but I've actually seen a number of kids who have been brought into the youth center who have had special needs um, find a way to socialize with people and find a way to become accepted in a community group thanks to the use of role playing games. One of these kids came in with a carer who was really into D&D. He's a great guy, and we got on really, really well. And over a period of time, they learnt not only how to play the game, but they eventually grew to eventually not need the assistance of the carer. And
Oh,
then
that's awesome.
and that was a few years ago, but now that same kid is a carer for another kid, and he's
Oh,
brought that
wonderful.
younger kid to my program and is kind of working through stuff and kind of going through things as well, which has been just an absolute. Well, first of all, it makes me feel super old, but but it's wonderful to see that role playing games have had this power,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's definitely something then that I've just been able to enjoy and been very proud to call my day-to-day life. And I appreciate that you called it like a rich history, because lots of people look at me and they're like, Michael, your schedule is insane. What are you doing? Like, do you
Well,
eat?
yeah,
Are
I
you
mean,
okay?
when you talk about how many games you run and plan every week, it's amazing that like my brain just would not be able to keep things straight. I would be all of the characters all the time. It would just be like I would just be vomiting out the different characters all at once. It'd be
Yep.
horrible.
Well, I mean, yeah. It does present its own challenges. So, on a slow week, I have 10 games per week. On a busy week, like such as my fortnightly games, when they all happen to line up for some bizarre reason, I think my biggest has been 20 games a week. For
Wow.
like maybe two weeks, there was like when COVID first hit, a friend of mine, a guy from How to Be a Great GM, asked me to do something insane. He said, "Let's do something to boost up morale and help people out. We're gonna do a 1 hour D&D session every single day for like a couple of weeks." And we
Wow.
did.
Okay.
We ran a D&D game. We ran a D&D game every week, every day. And I think we did only for like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But that was a crunch. That was definitely a
Uh-huh.
crunchy one. But yeah, most weeks is about 12, maybe 12 to 15 is most of my times.
Okay. Yeah, that seems a little more manageable depending like what's the average length of the game that you play?
Most of my games are 2 hours. Most of my
Okay.
home games or the ones that I do in person are about 3 hours. Mostly because when you're online, when you're like, like performing for people, in the online space, you got to kind of, I guess, understand where your audience is coming from. And
Mhm.
um, having worked with so many people and seeing how many different productions work, one thing I learned more than anything else is people want to watch these things, but people don't have the time. You can't watch all of your favorites. So either you have to compete with everyone and say that, well, like, hey, my 3 hour session that I'm running weekly, you can't fall behind because otherwise you're going to have to find another extra 3 hours next week to keep up.
Right.
Like it becomes like sort of like a point where you go, oh, well, I've dropped the ball on this show. I'm going to have to leave that show behind and keep watching something else. Or in my case, I have 2 hour games, which if you really, cut off like the intro and the outro, it's like close to like
Right.
maybe an hour, 40 minutes or something like that. But if you watch those shows, it's like, oh, well, that's okay if you missed a week because, you're not going to have missed that much of the story, like you can either not go with like an hour or an hour and a half of content, or you'd be more likely to find that time if you do miss it than if you were to try and catch up on like say Critical Role or something
Sure.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the nature of what I do and why I can run so many games is because it is still taxing creatively, but not a but definitely not not something that that is going to punish my audience for missing out on any of my games.
Hmm. That makes sense. And look, with the the work with the youth groups, is there particular systems that you always run? Like, do you always run D&D or Pathfinder or something like that, or do you mix it up? Do you show them a variety of systems? How does that work?
Well, it's very interesting you say that. I call myself, my title as a game master
Hmm.
is because I run so many different games. I have some favorites. I mean, like obviously D&D 5e is wonderful when I'm playing with new people who have not experienced role playing before. But I am a very big fan of a robust character build and character development thing. So I'm a very big fan of
Uh-huh.
Pathfinder.
Hmm.
But that being said, it's also very difficult to get into a good sci-fi, which, as someone who is a huge fan of like, the Aliens franchise and all of the lore and stuff like that, I've played Free League's Alien RPG system, which was
Hmm.
amazing, and I actually got to meet the developers for that. And so that is definitely another thing that comes with a high recommendation. As well as,
Hmm.
of course, Vast Grimm is another one of my all-time favorite sci-fis, because of just again how like if for me it's like a quintessential like D&D-esque game where if I haven't introduced someone to the concept of a sci-fi horror, the system
Hmm.
is so simple and so elegant. It is so easy for me to teach it to other people that I could, at the drop of a hat, run a game, because of how easy it is to understand and manage. And that's kind of what I look for, especially in my line of work, where that might happen. It might come down to like, hey,
Right.
Mike, we need you to run a game for some kids on the beach in like the middle of summer. What do you got? And I'm like, Vast Grimm, you know. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Cool, very good. You had mentioned that there were a lot of things on your list that you've managed to accomplish, or your goals that you had managed to accomplish. Are there other ones that you still have that you want to try and achieve either in the next year or next few years?
Oh, well, yes. Let's start with that. That's flat out. So my mission statement has always been about excellence in role playing, right? Like it's all about love, it's all about like supporting each other, it's all about sharing in this thing we love. And I think for me, one of the biggest things that I have as a goal is being on this side. I've gotten to see the impact that being a professional content creator has on a lot of creators around the space. And I want to be someone who, I mean, I don't want to be like one of those weird fans who like goes up to people and says, "Hey, Matt Mercer, be my friend." I don't want to be one of those, right? But I want to say that I appreciate how much effort and how much work goes into those spaces, and I want to do
Mhm.
stuff that is just genuinely fun and like rewarding for a bunch of content creators. Like I want to create these shows that have these players so excited, like you'll see performers go onto one shots, right? And you watch them and they'll be like, "Oh, that was so cool. That was so much fun." And then they never talk again, right?
Right.
And meanwhile, all of the one shots that I've run, and I mean this, almost all of the one shots that I've run, I've ended up in a very dynamic relationship, one way or another, with every single person I work with. Not because I'm sitting there and saying, "Hey, can I come over for dinner and be your best friend?" But because I value them as content creators, and I value the fact that they don't often get to just like shake loose the, like I'm on camera, I'm performing, this is
Right.
a professional
Yes.
thing. It's a not relax, we're good, we're fine. People are here because they want to see this thing, but I'm here because I want you to have a great time, right? If I have one person watching versus if I have 100 people watching,
Hmm.
the reward for me is always in my players. Like, I tell them, take your mind away from the audience, you be here. That's what people are here for.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
actually one of the ways I met Dave, from Netwrk, many moons ago, because a mutual friend of ours who was a guy from How to Be a Great GM
Hmm.
introduced us, and we got to meet and chat, and we got on really well. I love Dave. Dave and Ted are two of my favorite people in the whole wide
Yep.
world,
I agree.
because they're just such nice and awesome people. And yeah, we sometimes we just talk, we just say hi and that. And then every now and then it's like, hey, I've got a fun thing. And you don't even need to hear the details, right? It's just like,
Yep.
sure, I'll do it. And very recently, Dave recommended me for a charity, which they said, hey, like, who, do you have any celebrities you can come on to help us out with the charity stream? And he offered me, and I was like, yeah, sure,
It's awesome.
and that's how the network of content creators is, so the short wind TLDR of like, what is my goal for the next year, is to continue valuing these content creators, to continue to make them see the value in what they do, and reward them with the thing that I know that they love, right? Without the caveat of it having to be for work, right? To have
Right.
it be
Just for fun. Go and
have
play.
fun,
Yeah.
do enjoy these things,
Oh, that's awesome. I like that a lot. Do you see yourself going to any shows in 2022 or 2023,
I
depending on how things go pandemic wise?
so pandemic wise, okay, so I'm in WA, which is Western Australia. We are very lucky regarding the pandemic. We responded very well. Life is pretty much normal here at the moment, and the only thing we're worried about is ending border control. So any kind of travel for me comes with the caveat of I have to be prepared to live somewhere else for a couple of years, like, because if they shut down the border and I can't get back home, I got to
Yeah.
figure out how to do all that. So it's a terrifying notion at the moment for specifically this region.
Yep.
But that being said, I have many friends of mine who we have not met in person. We've always met online,
Mhm.
and we want to all get together at Gen Con in 2022 as a big group of Australian and New Zealand streamers,
Awesome.
and go to LA and hang out with some of the studio D&D guys over there, and
Uh-huh.
go hang out with, like, basically just tour around and meet for the first time a lot of these people who we've kind of worked with but never really associated with. And
Great.
then end it all with like the amazing Gen Con weekend, which I went in 2019, and it was next level. It was just an absolute blast.
That's where we met.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
I
it was.
because
It was.
because Dave had drugged me. Dave had asked if I wanted to go with him to hang out, meet up. That was all streamers,
Yep.
and I wasn't in that space at all. But Dave had met me before and had me on his show a couple of times already, and so that's where you and I met, and uh, met up with Janet and Demetrius and stuff. Because
Oh,
I
I don't think Demi was there, but yeah, it was Guy. Guy
oh
from
yeah, you're
yeah.
right, you're
Yeah,
right.
it was me. Yeah,
Yeah,
me, Janet, and Guy were basically like this little trio of, like, because it was all
yeah.
of our first Gen Con, and
Uh-huh.
Guy tricked me into going, because so that story was actually really funny. So Guy planned to go to the US for this whole trip. He did like a big tour around the US, and then went to a couple of conventions and hung out with fans and things like that. And Janet was going there as well because they received their first Any nomination,
Yep.
and that was amazing. It was wonderful and stuff. And then Guy, because Guy and I, our relationship is very, very personal, right? Like, we have our professional relationship, but then we're actually really good friends behind the scenes. So he turns around to me and he says, "Oh, Janet's coming, and I'm going, and we're gonna meet up with a whole bunch of people. It's such a shame that you're not going, Mike." And he guilt tripped me for like 3 days. Like, it was just this, "Oh, it'd be really cool if you got to come, like, I mean, like Derek, one of his other friends is like organizing all the accommodation and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just such a waste. You're not coming." And then I was like, "Fine, fine." And then, like, yeah, I did a big save up, and then went down with him. So pretty much from there we just kind of traveled, and went. We did the circus, which was just, yeah, it was so rewarding and so much fun. And yeah, getting to meet yourself at because it was also Dave's birthday celebration thing, wasn't it? Didn't we kind of like,
I think so. Yeah, I didn't
yeah.
think I knew that going into it, but I was yeah, that was good because there were a lot of cool people hanging out and just chatting and just hanging for quite some time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I do remember that. I do remember that. I also remember that I didn't know how tabs worked because I don't drink, and so I left my bank card at the pub.
Oh
Um,
no.
and no, but it was also really cool because I figured out that they they don't like when you do that because you can't tip them because they close the register. And I was like, "Oh, I felt so bad. I felt awful." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm Australian."
This is not
Which
how we do things.
It's not how we do things. We don't tip. We just pay people well. Anyway, I digress. But yeah.
That's awesome. So I know you're still working on your story for the Volatile Verse. So because you're contributing to that, anybody that's watching, and we won't give away any really big spoilers, but Michael's working on a murder mystery that really focuses around the characters that are in the situation itself and the NPCs. And I think that's because of all of your experiences that we've already talked about. I think that takes a much different approach than all the other guest writers that have submitted their articles or their adventures so far. And it's very exciting to see. I'm excited to see what the different characters are like that you put into it, just from the different characters that I've had the opportunity to have you play in with me in games.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm definitely a character-driven GM and role player. Like, I love nothing more than to be able to sink my teeth into a good role. And so when you approached me about, like, hey, do you want to do do you want to be one of the Kickstarter awards and get this thing up and running? I was so excited, right? Because having met you and having seen how Vast Grimm worked, I was like, I love the idea of the random tables. I love the idea of like this almost like you could have the same module in adventure and it would run like 5 or 6 different times and it would be completely different each and every time based on how you roll. But I always thought to myself, like, a lot of it was about the environment and the situation around you. Like, you go to this room has this in it and it has these monsters in it, and I thought to myself, like, man, there's going to be a lot of stuff like that. What if we turned that into a murder mystery and did something a little different? So the point of mine, in the great spirit of the Vast Grimm, was to be a parasitic adventure, where you could run this adventure that I'm writing alongside any of these random tables for any of the other locations. And the other locations could still function exactly the same. You could still use those tables and the stuff, because the murder mystery is all about the characters and the relationships that they have with one another and the Legion as you're playing. So again, without spoiling anything, there is a murder mystery. Someone has died aboard a ship that I've named the Acaridian, and you, as members of the Legion, are tasked with trying to get these people off the Acaridian because it's about to blow, it's about to do stuff, yada yada yada. But obviously, in light of a murder mystery, there is like, hey, there's someone sabotaging stuff. Hey, there's someone, there's some records that are missing. Hey, we need to collect data files, otherwise this guy's not going to leave. It's like, and then injuries abound, and lots of things end up happening. But every time you roll that, it's a different culprit. The culprit has a different motivation. The culprit has a completely different method that they're doing stuff. And I think one of the nice and cool easy ones is like, yeah, sure, a member of the crew is infected by one of the Grimm, and that's dictating their actions. And
Yep.
there's also a whole story arc for no one being a culprit. Like, it was
Oh,
just an
fantastic.
accident. Yeah, because that was
Awesome.
that's one of the ones that I said. It's like, so what happens if this is an accident? Well, then you're gonna have the easiest time, because as a GM, you just need to let the players' imaginations run wild. If they are suspicious of someone, lean into it, because even outside of them being the culprit, everyone has their own suspicious story. So, and the characters can work not only in this adventure but other adventures as well. So you could take one of my characters, put it in, like, say, another running, and you've got all of their behavioral charts and things like that, which you can then use to build and establish relationships with that character in another adventure. So that's what I mean when I
Wonderful.
say it's a parasitic adventure. It can go anywhere. It can be anything. Yeah, it's a little different because it's because the location is so fluid.
Awesome. I think that sounds great. I really like that concept. I'm looking forward to play testing it because yes, there will be lots of fun with that and seeing how people react to the situations. I'm gonna have to with all the different options there and possibilities. There's gonna have to be a lot of different people playing that and seeing how people take it,
Oh
which
yeah.
is always so much fun. I love when different groups of people play the exact same adventure, and it goes in so many different directions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like there's no greater joy, especially so I play a lot of adventure modules, right? Like a lot of the Pathfinder adventure pods, the D&D pre-written stuff as well. And one thing that's always amazing is when you run the same game and it goes in a completely different route, something that you were not expecting, something that your players have just turned into their own game. It brings me a special kind of joy to see that, and Vast Grimm is almost built upon that concept. And I like, for example, I think if you don't mind me saying, the conundrum adventure, like
Mhm.
at the
Yep.
gate, is just so cool. Like I've run it for some friends of mine in private, not broadcast or not anywhere on the internet.
Uh-huh.
And I've run it 3 times so far, and each time it was just, yeah, it was just so, like, because of the situation. Like one group went in into the situation, and the first thing that happened was they were eaten. And then they said, well, can we play Grimm? And I said, sure, why not? So what are you gonna do? And then they went around and started trying to infect other legions. They sent out a distress signal to try and lure
Oh,
people.
wonderful.
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome. And yeah. Meanwhile, we have, like, another group that came in and tried to be heroes and save the day. Again, not spoiling anything, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was
No.
it was great.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love the idea of people playing as the Grim. There's been some talk on the Infinite Black Discord of people writing third-party content where for rules for being able to do that. Since the open license allows you to write whatever you want for it,
Mm.
I'm really excited to see where people take it, especially once we have the physical books. Because I think people will do more of that. I know you haven't done a lot of um, adventure and module writing for publication prior to this. Is that something that you dabbling in this? Is that something you see yourself doing more of in the future?
Um, Writing out the adventure has been a learning experience. Mostly because I'm very mouthy. And I found out, like, I think day one I had written 5,000 words, and I looked at my adventure and I was like, that's actually what inspired me to not have a location, was that I wrote so much that I was like, I had to pick.
Uh-huh.
And because I'm very descriptive, I'm very cinematic, because my background is in theater, film, and television. So that's where I can kind of come from. So I really really wanted to look at kind of like my own style of writing. Like, what am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to do? And learning, like, so much about, like, how language works and how to, like, write a dossier versus how to write what the GM should be saying.
Yep.
All of these different things. I was very, very pleased to like discover that I was enjoying the process, and it has inspired me to kind of start writing down stuff for my own adventure campaign. Um,
Wonderful.
because yeah, originally I've just been locking things away in my brain, so
Yeah.
because writing has never been one of those things at my forefront, but having the opportunity to write this adventure has kind of piqued that interest, and yeah, hopefully it'll start doing some pretty cool stuff later down the track.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. And it's so much different. Like the style of writing that, because we built this based off of Merkborg, and so the writing style of that, it's very short. It's not like previous adventures that I had written. It's like, okay, I'm writing out the dialogue that people are like the NPCs can say to people to try and help, especially with younger GMs. And things like that. And it's like, okay, no, I got to cut all that out. Keep it as brief as possible to have less text on the page and have more splash all over the place. It's definitely a different approach to adventure writing.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, Malachus or Malakat said, "Do you mostly run pre-written modules for the games you run, or do you run a lot of your own ideas for your games? Uh, and how long does it take to set up sessions for your groups? I mean, that's a really big one, especially with all the groups that you run. How the length of time you have to put in ahead of time. How does that all pan out?
Um, so That's a great question. I would say that I run a fair few modular games. So let's see. Of the 10 that I run every week, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Seven are modules. So, a fair amount of them tend to be. Um, that being said, I think it is harder to run games with your own ideas, mostly because, at least while I'm running my games, I'm also creating it at the same time, and it takes a
Mhm.
lot more mental energy to create your own campaign and create your own story than it is to run an adventure. For me, running an adventure is about memory, and I'm good at memory. Memory. As a performer and actor trained at university, like one of the things you learn is you have to memorize scripts. So memorizing a module I can do easily. So if I turn to a page in a book while I'm running, say, Curse of Strahd, it's like, okay, I need to read 4 words, and then suddenly my memory just flushes in with all of the
Nice.
information I need. So that's why I use modules for a lot of my bread and butter games. For my own for my own bigger games where I'm creating my own stuff. Usually, you'll see it's either really really good or really really bad. Like it's one of those ones where you get to see exactly how much mental fatigue I'm in at that particular week.
Yep.
And yeah, so for me, a good setup for a module game, if I've done my job, if I've done the right thing, will take me 5 minutes. Like if you,
Mhm.
Brian, right now said, "Hey, can you run me through your Vast Grimm game?" I would say yes. I would say get some dice and we could do it right now. Right? Like that's how much prep time I need. I need
Okay, we're on.
none. Yeah, that's it. Let's do it. Okay. No. So yeah, that's how much prep time I need. I need next to
Yep.
none if I'm running a module that I am, again, ready for because
Familiar
that's
with.
just
Yep.
how I am. Um, if I am running something that I have not prepped myself, I would say I could make a, let's say, 3 hour adventure, because we're not looking at a show, we're looking at an adventure. A 3 hour show, probably I could probably get something down in half an hour, if that. You know, like yeah. One thing that I've learned is that my turnaround time is super quick, so I'm pretty good at coming up with decent stories, synergizing these different adventures.
Mhm.
One thing I tell people a lot is a lot of people say like, "Hey, Mike, you must be really really good at D&D, right? You play all the time." And I'm like, actually, the truth is the reason why I'm good at D&D, the reason why I'm a great GM, is because I have failed being a good GM more times than I know some people will ever try to actually run
Yep.
games.
Mhm.
And if there is a mistake to be made in role playing, I have made that mistake, and I've learned from it. And that's the nature of it. So my
Yep.
turnaround time's half an hour because I'm like, cool. What can I grab people's attention for a one shot in 3 hours? I know I've run 100 of them, and I can make it completely unrecognizable. But every
Mhm.
now and then you'll have that one player that'll turn around and say, "Is that a Blackadder quote?" And I'm like, "No, shut up." Yes,
It's good to throw little Easter eggs in every now and then.
yeah, yeah. That's what I call them as well, Easter eggs.
Yeah. Well, and I'd never thought about it that way with the idea of running a module and not and the amount of energy it takes to do that versus like making like homebrewing it and putting all the new content in yourself ahead of time. And that really makes a lot of sense because like I couldn't imagine running games that you're just completely making up on the fly, as many as you do, and not just being just dead to the world every single moment that you're not running a game.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The in between periods are very sacred to me. Because it's my time to not only reflect but also refresh. There are definitely days that I just crash. I just go to bed. Like it's like the middle of the day. I'll go to bed and wake up, have dinner, and then start another show. But I think this is the one thing I could say to people. As someone who has pushed the absolute extreme limits of like gaming and fatigue and stuff like that. My catchphrase for my channel is "game hard or die trying," and it's kind of like an ironic catchphrase because I understand exactly how much effort it takes to be and to do this, right? So a lot of people
Hmm.
say like, "Hey, you run 2 games a week, and that's too much," and that is fine. That's the nature of it. Um, I definitely have seen people who have run games as many as I have, who have completely burnt out. The trick is to know where your limit is and to know
Hmm.
what's going to work for you. And if that means that between sessions you are going and playing badminton or going to the beach, then go to the beach, do that.
Yep.
If sometimes you need to turn around and cancel on a game and say, hey, look, I just don't want to play today, right?
Hmm.
That's also fine. I think a lot of players feel like when you hit a game, you need to like commit forever. It's like that is it. But the scary
Great.
thing is that games don't have time limits. Like when you join a campaign, it's not like your GM turns around and says, "Oh yeah, everyone, so this game is going to be like 400 games long. We're going to play every week." No one says that. So there is that pressure, that unseen pressure. Whereas, when you're playing in a live studio or in a game, it's like, yeah, we've got 12 episodes, we got 6 episodes, we got however many, right? And you play within that. So yeah, like understand your fatigue, understand where your pacing is. That's both my feeling and my advice towards towards that.
That makes a lot of sense. What do you do for your downtime? Unless
Uh,
that's totally secret and
no, no, no.
there's certain. Yeah.
So so I love gaming. I really really do. I one of my biggest regrets is that I don't have real in life friends that come over and play games with me. It's very sad. All my friends are online and overseas and stuff like that. So what I do, and don't laugh because it is kind of sad, is I will either play board games by myself, or I will build minis for board games that I will play with no one. So these are some
Gotcha.
Malifaux mini
Uh
pieces
huh.
that I'm working on. Uh, you know,
Nice.
and yeah, that's it. Beyond that, because those things that I do are also very therapeutic. It helps me like sort of just chew on ideas with my subconscious. Like if I've written an
Yep.
adventure, I won't think about it directly. I'll like build minis and stuff like that, and then just let stuff go. And before anyone asks, no, I don't paint any of them because I don't want to. Uh,
I can't paint that small. I just can't do it. I'm too fat fingered and
I was
ham
gonna say, you
fisted.
know what? I find that so surprising because you are such an amazing sculptor, right? You know what I
Well,
mean?
thank you.
I mean, okay, so for those of you who don't know, because I know Brian's now been like, talking about me and how wonderful I am, but let me talk to you about a friend called Brian, right? So I met Brian at Gen Con 2019. I met him at this party for some streamers and YouTubers and stuff like that. But when I first saw Brian, it was at his stall at Gen Con, which was just filled with these trophy-headed fantastical creatures that were like so like it was almost like they came out of like the Wizard of Oz, right? Like they just were ripped from this other dimension, and then just like put on display. I was in awe of just the fact that you had sculpted all of these things by hand, and that getting to even see the promotional Vast Grimm head that you'd made with the
Mhm.
speed, the time lapse thing. Um, was absolutely incredible, and it takes a very very unique type of artist to be able to not only visualize that within your mind, to be able to actualize it with the skills of your hand. I find it very surprising that smaller things are not on the cards. I'm like, man, that'd be just, yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm also, I'm pretty sloppy when I paint. Like, I know it, and it's okay because that's how I want it to be. I don't want to get super like doing that tiny little detail. That's like that's that's stressful to me. That's not relaxing and really like doing it. But I've recently, like, I've never really built minis, but I've started buying like Gundam kits to kit bash and build into other things, especially space stuff. It's easy to break all the pieces apart and glue it back together in ways it wasn't supposed to be,
Nice.
and
So
look
when do we
real.
see the Grim Gundam?
Well, Space Station I just built, um, has pieces from Gundam models, but I don't know if when I'll do an actual like real Gundam Grimm. But whoa, I think that's a good idea.
Nice.
I'll have to write that down. Here, hang on.
Yeah, that's
Grim
it. Like,
Gundam.
like little bits of its face kind of peeling away with like bits of like
Yep.
the grim on the inside. Ah, yeah, gross.
I like it. I
Disgusting.
like it. So we're normally supposed to be done in about 5 minutes. I know we got off to a late start because my audio problems. But because of that, do you have any last minute advice that you want to give to anybody?
Ooh, you know what? I'll defer this. If anyone has any advice that you want directly, leave it in chat now. If you have any questions whatsoever about GMing, about streaming, about talking to people online about role playing, uh, use this opportunity. Write it in chat, and I will give you a direct answer. Because, look, I'm not gonna lie. There is literally so many things that I could share with people. I made a YouTube channel dedicated to people asking me questions and me giving them answers. It is, the Dead Aussie Gamer YouTube channel. It has gone quiet because I've run too many games and I haven't had time to go back to it. But no, I love helping people out. Because again, there's very few people in the world who get to see role playing games from so many different perspectives and are available to be able to share that experience with people. Um,
You
and
have a question.
oh yeah, go on.
When you play with the kids, do you use maps and minis, or is it more theater of the mind?
It's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. To answer that in a more broad sense, I have a giant digital whiteboard for the youth center, and I put my digital maps up there. I then just use kind of like little like sketches and drawings to kind of like give them a close approximation. But I have anywhere between 10 to 20 kids um in one table at any given time. We call the session the one man epic, where where I have to entertain all these kids, and it's even worse when they split into like three different groups, and then one of those
Oh
groups
my.
splits into four groups, and then I'm
Uh-huh.
juggling all of that. So we kind of use a digital map in a way. For the most part, there is a lot of theater of the mind though, because obviously I only have so many maps, I have only so many things. So it's more like the map is just a visual for the kids to be like, oh, there's a wagon over there. Can we use it? And I'm like, yeah, sure, you can use that wagon, Or if they say, oh, it's raining, I don't feel like it's raining. It's kind of a reminder that, hey, it's raining. Look, the map's got water on it. That kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, 20 sounds like a lot.
What about you? Do you have any questions about GMing? I mean, you might. I meant you, Brian.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Any questions? Not off the top of my head. I mean, it's very rare that I ever play. Like I've always been a forever GM since I was little. So I've got all sorts of technical questions now, like especially thinking about running for that many people and using a whiteboard and all of that. But no, I think and for kids, uh, is there any particular approaches that you would suggest versus just jumping um, into a game? Like, do the kids that are new to it, do they start out with character creation, or are they given a pre-gen character that they can start with?
So brand new kids, if they've played D&D before, so here's the thing. Most kids who have played D&D before will actually come in with a sheet.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I've almost never seen it, but it'll almost always be wrong. Because they'll have played with massive homebrews because
Yep.
I don't know why a lot of GMs believe that kids are somehow or another unable to understand how role playing works, and so I'll see this kid's sheet and I'll be like, "Why is your AC like in the 30s for D&D?" And they're like, "Oh, we always get an extra +10 on all our stuff because of this, that, and the other." And I'm like, "No, no, no, you don't get that." And then I have to like readjust all of the stuff to a baseline. So, if they know what they're doing, they come with a character. Some of them come with good characters and stuff like that. I'll have a look at it and then decide. But apart from that, it's usually here's a pre-gen to start and cut your teeth with. After
Yep.
maybe 2 or 3 sessions, if they like what's happening, if they like the idea of role playing, then introduce them to the idea of making their own characters, of which I usually guide them towards D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond is just so useful,
Easy. Yeah.
or Hero Labs if they're using a different system, or something that'll help them generate. I know that Vast Grimm has a very cool and robust generator for new characters as well. So again, another one of those like, this is why I use it for kids, because it is it's so accessible,
Yeah.
and more importantly, if this young person is experiencing role playing for the first time as well, giving them that investment in their character sheet, like actually getting them to write out their character sheet, um, helps them want to make it live more. Because if I give you a pre-gen,
Right.
it's like, I don't care about this.
Right.
I'm gonna go and shoot the
You'll just
sheriff
hand
in
me
the
another
face.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't generally let pre-gens live long in my games. Usually it's like, yeah, you've got about 3 games with that pre-gen, then you're gonna be making your own character, because yeah, that's just how we do.
Yep. I like that. And there's another question. Do you have issues with kids trying to cheat the game?
Yes, all the time. But it's really funny. It's really funny too, because it's only ever the new kids to my program who try to cheat, because no one has gotten away with it ever. And it's really funny because we've got three different things. Number one is everyone tattles on each other because
Mhm.
they sit next to each other, and I've had moments where I've just said, "All right, guys, we're gonna have everyone make fort saves. I need you to get confirmation from the person next to you." And when that happens, everyone naturally and instinctively pairs off, and from that point on, they instinctively check your dice, so you can't really cheat. But I've had kids who have basically gone, "Oh yeah, I got a 16," and another kid gone, "Actually, no, 4 plus 2 is like a 6. Where'd you get the 16 from?" "Ah, I thought I added 10 from somewhere." And it was just like, the important thing is to not call them out on it, because they're kids, and
Right.
kids
Yep.
have this stigma of, if I lose, I'm inferior in some way. So,
Hmm.
so the idea is to break that idea. Like, no, you haven't lost. You haven't been defeated. All you have done is you've opened a different door to the story. That's it. Um, if your character is dying or is about to die, that's not the end of you and your adventure. That is the end. That is the swan song of this character. And I'll usually actually do a really, really touching scene. Like, recently I had a young kid's wizard die. And I said, cool, if your wizard could do something before they passed away, what would it be? And then he said it was like, oh, I really wish I got to see my master one more time. So his spirit got taken up to the god of light, who then shaped him into a canary, and then let him loose into the world. And the canary flew back to the wizard's tower, and there was this kind of crotchety old wizard there who was like yelling at another student, and then saw the little canary, and then like dropped what he was carrying, and then burst into tears. And student come up and asked the wizard, like, "Why are you crying?" And the wizard couldn't answer. He says, "I don't know. I'm just really, really sad for some reason." And literally had all the kids in tears and stuff like that. And it was like such a beautiful farewell. So once you get rid of
That's
the
wonderful.
idea of what a loss is,
Hmm.
they just stop cheating. And like I said, the only people who don't know that are the people who like are brand new. They come in and they're like, "Oh, I can roll and cheat," and then quickly learn that everyone is on my side.
Nice. I like that. That's very good. How do you get rid of the idea of winning in a role playing game? How do
How
you
do you
best get rid of it?
how do you best get rid of it? So firstly, it is rewarding actions that are not efficient, and that is the first step. People taking risks and taking actions that could potentially fail is an important thing to do, because otherwise you get to a point where it's like, who wants to talk to this person? It's the person with the highest stat that is appropriate, which means that that is the only person the GM will be talking to. So you need to reward people and say, well, no, I don't need a check. That person there said something really creative. I don't want you to make the check. You just succeed because you took a risk, you said your piece, and now I'm rewarding you for it by allowing you to simply pass. Um, Same thing with, you know, like taking combat. Like, yeah, okay, cool. I can swing and hit you with my sword or shoot you with my blaster. But, you know, just because I'm not good at shooting you with my blaster doesn't mean I'm going to not take pot shots. And, you know, rewarding that means like, yeah, okay, you missed the Grimm that's coming at you from the front, but you've managed to hit a pipeline behind him, and smoke has started pulling out, and the Grimm is now distracted. So even though you failed to do damage to the Grimm, you've still pushed forward in some meaningful way. So as long as you kind of create that sensation, they're willing to try new things. And that's the important thing. Once you've gotten to that point, the idea of winning and losing starts to fade, because you're no longer trying to succeed. You're now realizing that not succeeding can sometimes also lead to success in a way. And it becomes more about exploring and about feeling and touching and what can I do? What are the limits of where I can play in this imaginary space? And then once you get to the important part of having the group feel that way, the next bit is to have a guaranteed loss. The guaranteed loss is something that in a hero's journey builds the heroes up. It is something that they cannot beat, they cannot win against. They have to pull away, because this is the point where, as a GM, you need to understand you are all powerful in the role of the GM, right? Like, there is nothing stopping you from opening up the Vast Grimm book, dropping every Grimm on every page into your Legion's path, and wiping them from existence. There is nothing stopping you. There's no rules that stops you. That is the power you have. But what you need to do is you need to show that power without exerting it, so that the players understand we can be creative, and we have failed in this situation. We have lost, but we're not done. The adventure in the story is not over. We have more to do. And with those two factors falling in, it means that they then get to that point where the idea of winning is just gone, because sometimes you simply can't win. And sometimes when you fail, you still succeed anyway. And once you've established those two rules as part of your game, they forget about winning entirely.
I like that. And Malachissa says, "Rocks fall, everyone dies."
Yes, You know what? I actually did that once. It was important because they collapsed a mine on a dragon to trap themselves in the cave with the dragon. And it was the one and only time I've ever turned around and said, "Rocks fall, everybody dies," because yeah, they did, and it was good.
Nice. Well, Michael, it's been so good having you on here. It's one good to get to know you even better each time we get to hang out and be on a call, and it's great to share you with the fans of Vast Grimm, and I'm excited for your adventure that's coming our way. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this week's Netwrk Chatter. We'll be back again in 2 weeks, although, you know, December is coming to a close, holidays are hitting, so things may be a little crazy. In a week from today, we will have the 5th installment of our Radical Terror campaign of Vast Grimm, the actual play campaign, where it will be the next to last episode of this segment of the storyline. And please tune in. If you'd like to see more, check out vastgrimm.com, and you can pre-order the game now, or go ahead and snag the PDF and start playing. That's it for this time. And thanks for tuning in to the Netwrk Chatter.